We just found some really spectacular pieces of vintage jewelry here. We're going to look at them. We're going to talk about pricing and dating them as well. Hey, it's Don. Today we're going to look at some jewelry items I found, including this lovely set here. This is a very fine example from the mid to late 40s into the early 1950s. Fabulous rhinestones just studded with them across. We'll take a closer look at this in just a minute here. These sorts of things can make you a lot of money, especially when they're sets, especially when they're this finely made. This is a very fine set here. With this one here too, the earrings are actually for pierced earrings. Most of these sorts that I run into are clip-on screwbacks and things like that. Standard pierced earrings are usually what you want for most of these sets, especially when they look like this. This is a fully usable, wearable piece. Someone would look just spectacular out in the night, an evening gown or something. This is just a fine example that I paid $5 for, the complete boxed set here. So these are the items here. This is a nice close-up of it here, and these are actually pierced earrings, which I usually don't see in these sorts of things. So it does have a standard, in fact, let's just zoom in here. Now, as you can see, there are pierced earrings here. These are multi-piece constructed. They are handmade, put together piece by piece. Basically, they grab a strand, just basically one of these here. Let me just take this off here. So basically they grab a strand and they're soldering it, or I guess maybe almost spot welding it together. Let me take this out of here so we can see it a little bit better here. I can get it out carefully. So this is from the 1940s, probably mid to late 1940s, into the very early 1950s. And usually I can tell that by totally the construction of the item itself. Now these look like they're actually glass or crystal, and it does honestly look like they were hand faceted or possibly machine faceted, but they actually have sharp edges and do appear to be faceted. They have some spectacular sparkle to them. They're just a rainbow of colors for what they are. I mean, it just sparkles. I don't know if the video does it justice, but in my face it's just beaming with rainbows of light all over the place from this thing. Now what this is strands, as I said, put together. So they'll take a strand like this piece here. Each one of these will be mounted in there, whether it's machine done or by hand, depending on the era. Now, usually what they'll do is they'll have a layout drawing. So they'll have a drawing on where they have to bend everything. So when they bend up a strand of this, again, that's all this is just a strand. Let's see if we can kind of replicate it a little bit there. So it's just basically a strand running over this, and then it's soldered together in specific places. Again, it matches the plan, the setup that they have from the beginning of this. So they'll just glue them together. So this is all soldered together by hand. It's just a bunch of different strands of these. They've been cut at a certain point. They can cut between each one of these little linkages on here, and that's how these are put together. Now, older pieces, 1950s, mid-50s, and before, are usually constructed this way. Another thing, too, these smaller rhinestones like what are on here, you don't see them very often in the later ones. They're more expensive to do. It takes some more precise instruments to put them together in the whole works, and to produce them, obviously. So again, this is put together. All the pieces were hand soldered, hand welded all over the place. Even on here, these were linked together, so it's multiple rows. Let's zoom in so you can see it just a little better there. But you can see the solders, the welds, where they kind of just run right into each other there. Again, these are non-movable. It's only movable where it matters. The rest are just stuck together all the way around. So in all essence, this is a handmade piece of jewelry. Was made one at a time because the technology to mass do these at one point just wasn't there. So they had to do the bows in certain aspects one by one back in these days. I really hope you can see the glistening on them. The amount of rhinestones on these as well helps dictate the value on them in many cases. The more stones it has, the better. Now, white usually isn't the best choice, but when it's something just this dramatic with matching earrings and the whole works, I mean, this is just a spectacular set here. It's got a little dirt on it, so it does need to be cleaned. I will probably clean it. Now, another factor on earlier ones I see is sometimes the clasps will have like faux-looking stones mounted on the back. It'll be a generic-looking clasp on it, too, like this one here. Nothing super, super fancy. Just slides in and locks into place. That's typically the type of clasp I see in the late 40s, early 50s. Let me set this one aside here. Now, here's another one. This is another bracelet that we nabbed up at the very same place. Now, just by sheer looks of this, the design, this probably would be mid-50s, maybe a hair newer, but that's about my guesstimate on these. On some of these, too, some of them will have designs on the backs of some of the clasps like this. They're not super sturdy clasps. They're nothing super spectacular. They're still chunky and square like you see here. There's no markings on a large number of these. Now, looking at the stones on here, it's obviously paste or glass is what I would say, and they were cast. It wasn't cut. These are not faceted. They're almost rounded off on every aspect. So again, these aren't actually full-fledged, like, nice quality rhinestones like you'd see on the piece I have here. Totally different construction. Obviously, faux pearls. 1950s were popular for these pearl and mixtures on them, too. Looking at the back side here, usually there's a mounting peg. I don't know how well you're going to see it, but there's a mounting peg or a solder point on one of the single links in the chain. So like this link here would have a stud or a mounting point or be soldered. So each point you see, it's soldered so that each one of these links can't move. So they're locked into place on each one of those. So there is some obviously labor put together in putting this in. So these have to be mounted. The pearls have to be carefully glued in there. All the links need to be mounted together as well. This is, again, just cheaper faux jewelry. It's not real authentic jewelry. It's obviously costume jewelry. Now, one thing I look for, too, on some of these are newer ones like this one here as well. Now, this is black onyx with some more rhinestones on the side. And they're actually faceted. They look very nice, actually. They glisten. Even the onyx looks like it's been truly faceted. It's got a very nice flat top with some very sharp edges. But this is 50s or later, I would gather, even into the 60s. It has nice, smooth, well-constructed backs to them. Even the clasp part here isn't as harsh. It isn't as sharp. This is a better piece in construction quality, I would say. And it's not as, again, sharp or clunky like this one. This one actually could hurt you if you push down on one of these. It would stick into your skin without a doubt. This one's a lot more user-friendly, I would say. It's smoother. It's more refined as well. Only has one little link between them. So this one's later, late 50s, early 60s. These are always key factors I look for when I'm trying to decide on date and age and stuff. Obviously, many of these you can distinguish by the pattern as well. This is an earlier one. You'll see these going back to the 30s. A nice dinner dress or something like that, a night out in the town, you would see these. These are almost like runway style types. Again, once it's clean, this thing will sparkle so much better than what you can see it right now as well. I mean, it's just a spectacular piece all around. Now, price-wise, I paid $5 for this set. I know somebody would easily give me $20 for it right off the bat just because of the bows. They collect bows. People collect specific things, just like they collect animal pins and things like that. I always look for those inside niches to some of these categories. Rhinestones in general do sell, but again, people love the beautiful, the colored ones. This one has so much going for it because of the amount of sparkle, the amount of glam, the amount of basically a runway show, it looks like to me. I mean, it's just a substantial piece, even though it's small, tiny ones. They're kind of playing off on the fact that there's so many actual faceted rhinestones that it just glares and glistens everywhere. Now, if this was larger stones, larger rhinestones, there'd be far less of them to take up the same space, so it wouldn't be as much reflectiveness and sparkle to them. It also sets off the large stones on the face of this. Just spectacular piece here. So price-wise, to sell this, I probably would get at least $40-45 bare bones minimum on this. I'll probably list it at, say, $125 as a runway, substantial cocktail, evening on the town, or something like that piece here. Just a very fine example of this sort of thing. Being able to date them is key. If they're constructed by hand soldered, things like that, they're usually 50s or before. Now, they did do some of that later on, but usually what they found was it's cheaper just to have sheets of metal that they can mount it on instead of actually soldering every single one together. This would have been like one solid piece, the ribbon, and then they would have just mounted the stones on the face of it, so they didn't have to actually solder and do a bunch of extra work. So the construction techniques change over time, and that's how I usually date them, and that actually helps me price them as well. Well, there we have it. Hopefully that gave you some ideas, some thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button down below. You can also hit the bell icon to be notified if I post new content or go live. Subscribe and tell all your friends.
You discovered electricity.
No, something really shocking. Look, Carefree sugarless gum here, Trident here. Both cost the same, yet Carefree gives you 32% more gum by weight than Trident. And Carefree's taste, electrifying.
Then the electricity.
I'll think about it in Washington, A.C.
That's Washington, D.C.
Get more gum with Carefree.
Now in bubble gum, too.
More gum. Carefree sugarless gum.